Amiche e amici di Vita da Pugili, buonasera a tutti. In questa trasmissione abbiamo un ospite veramente graditissimo ed eccezionale, la potete vedere già sul nostro schermo. Si tratta di Jackie Kallen. Se c'è soltanto una persona che non conosce il suo nome, è stata la più grande, prima e più grande manager donna nella storia del pugilato. È da noi conosciuta anche da noi fans italiani come manager di grandissimi campioni come James Toney, Bronco McCart, per fare soltanto due nomi, e oggi abbiamo veramente il piacere di fare una chiacchierata con lei e parliamo un po' di pugilato, della sua esperienza, della sua carriera e di tutte le sfide che ha dovuto affrontare. Jackie, thank you very much for being with us today.
It's my pleasure. Whatever you said, it sounded wonderful.
I just said nice things and I say the truth. So,
but everything sounds so beautiful in that accent. Just beautiful.
Beautiful. Thank you. Thank you very much. Thank you very much. So, Jackie, I took the liberty to, carry out a little bit of homework and study your career. And as we were saying before, while we were not on record, I think that nothing is more appropriate with you than a fighter's life, because you had to overcome so many challenges, obstacles, and you really are a fighter yourself. Okay, and so it's just appropriate that you are associated with boxing and this wonderful sport.
Well, I think we all have fights in life. You know, every day there's a new obstacle, there's a bump in the road. For me, it started young. My parents got divorced when I was young, and it was hard being from a broken home at a time when a lot of kids didn't have divorced parents. So that was a little challenging because I was the girl from the, broken home. But that didn't break me. I felt that I could overcome that and be my own person and no longer be just the girl from the broken home, but be myself. And then I went on to get married at a young age and have my two children, my boys. And my husband, after 30 years of marriage, decided he wanted to be with someone else and he left. But that didn't break me either. It was tough. You know, starting over is always tough, but you fight back and you find ways to combat and battle and fight the things that are oppressive to you. You know, and along the way, I lost my mother to cancer. I lost my father. Um, just left me and my brother, and who I love dearly. And I've had a lot of battles along the way. I've had two lumpectomies. I have four heart stents. I'm blind in one eye legally from glaucoma. But those are things that everybody gets, challenges, and we fight back and we say, this is not going to break me. It's going to make me and make me stronger. And recently, I've gone through some real challenges. My younger son had a brain tumor. He just had surgery a week ago, and that was very stressful because it was
I
his
read about that. I read
yeah,
about
that was
that. Yeah.
his second one. But you know what? We're stronger than we think. And when it's time to be strong, we pull up that strength. So that kind of fighting attitude has helped me greatly in life. And I think it helped me in the sport of boxing because if I have that fighting spirit, I can try to impart it and teach it to the fighters that I work with. That talent is not enough, discipline and training aren't enough. It's what's in your heart, it's how strong you are mentally. And that makes a big difference in the ring and out of the ring.
Of course, and literally what you just said is the perfect description of a fighter. And let me say that looking back at the beginning of your career as even before you were a manager, it's very a particular start because you were a journalist.
Yes.
If I studied correctly your bio, and probably just by chance you got to know the world of boxing when you got in touch with the Kronk Gym back in Detroit, and you became the let's say the PR and publicist for Thomas Hearns. Is that correct?
That's absolutely right. And that was 43 years ago, and we are still best friends. I would have to say, if I were to list the top five people in my life, Thomas Hearns would be one of them because we still talk every single day. Um, we have a couple projects we're working on together.
Great,
Did a
great.
radio show together, and before COVID hit over here, and we just have always maintained a very loyal, lasting friendship that started through business, through working together. And over the years, he became like a younger brother. And we've shared a lot of wonderful moments together. And he's a legendary fighter, Hall of Famer,
Absolutely, absolutely.
seven-time world champion. And he's just that great out of the ring as he is in the ring. Just a really special guy.
That's great to hear. But I was wondering, before the moment that you met with Tommy Hearns and
Mhm.
probably I assume Emmanuel Stewart, have you ever had any interest in boxing, or was it just the first time that you had the chance yourself to be around the boxing environment?
Well, the craziest thing is, and this is like totally bizarre, but when I was about 12 years old, my mother, who was an amateur actress, she did a lot of summer stock and theater groups. She played a boxing manager, and it was the craziest thing. But she played
Really?
she played this woman whose husband died, and didn't leave her any money, but he left her the contract of a fighter, and she didn't know what the heck to do with it, but she was able to take that contract and turn that fighter into a champion, and therefore make a lot of money. And then 20 years later in real life, I became a boxing manager. So it was really ironic. We had a lot of talks about that and how strange life can be.
Yeah, yeah. And what is even more incredible, but we'll talk about that a little bit later, is that in 2004, you as a manager were portrayed in a movie, I believe, produced
I
by
know.
Paramount. That's incredible.
It is so, the
Full
whole thing
circle.
has been very surreal. I think just to feel that anything that you've done in life is important enough to inspire a movie, I think was very complimentary. To think that by breaking down barriers, I showed other young girls, and really anybody from any group that's a minority, you can go into whatever field you want. You can attempt anything that you want to attempt if you believe you can do it. I don't think I would have attempted management of a fighter if I didn't think that I could take that athlete from the amateurs through the pros all the way to a world title. I had a plan, and I had a kind of a pattern, a formula, and it worked. And it's worked several times, and it's working again. I've got a young fighter now, undefeated. He'll be
Okay.
fighting on Showtime next week.
Great.
And I just feel like when you get the formula down and you stick to it, you can repeat that success. And again, like we said before, I know what I'm looking for in a fighter. And so when I find a fighter who has those ingredients, I believe he can go all the way.
And you know that all the elements, so to speak, are there for a successful recipe, so to speak.
And it works in life too. You have to have the ability, the natural ability. I mean, for me, I know what I was good at, and I certainly knew what I wasn't good at. So I didn't attempt things that I wasn't good at. I'm not a champion skier. I'm not a singer. There's a million things I couldn't do. So I didn't pursue those things. So you find what you're good at. And then it takes a lot of preparation. You have to study, you have to practice, you have to put your heart and soul into whatever you're doing. You have to be the best at it that you can possibly be. And then, like we said before, there's that intangible heart, soul, drive, spirit that you have to be successful.
Absolutely, and that's again that's the description of a fighter, of a boxer. And
Mhm.
just like every boxer, you had probably the chance to learn your craft in the 10 years that you spent around the boxing environment and being the PR for Thomas Hearns from 1977, 1978, so to speak, and 10 years probably before you had your first fighter boxer as a manager, which
You're right. 10 years.
again,
It was
10,
like a college education, really,
yeah,
because I
exactly, exactly.
studied under Emmanuel Stewart, and I wanted him to teach me everything. I wanted to learn how to wrap hands properly, how to stop a cut. I practiced and practiced on plums because they would squeeze out the purple juice and I'd stop it. I practiced on steaks. I'd get a raw steak and I'd slice it and then I'd stop the bleeding, from the steak. So I practiced my craft. I learned how to pick the right sparring partners for the right fight. I learned how to pick the right opponent at the right time. You don't push a fighter, but you don't hold him back too much. And so I learned so much that it took 10 years till I felt ready to strike out on my own. And I think it's important. You have to learn your craft.
Absolutely. And let's remember that during these 10 years of education, so to speak, it was the late 70s and the 80s. And so probably a woman in an environment as, let me say, macho driven as boxing, as sexist as boxing, as affected by ageism as boxing, was an incredible challenge. So not only a very long period of training and learning, but overcoming obstacles and skepticism, probably.
Oh,
Tell us something about this kind of challenge.
well, at the beginning, it was tough on me because everybody assumed I was younger then. I was 32 when I started. And I think people were questioning, who is this young blonde white woman that's in the gym at the fights? What's she doing there? Who's she sleeping with? Why is she there? What does she know? What doesn't she know? It was very mysterious to people.
Yeah,
I
yeah,
had a
yeah, yeah.
lot of people tell me to, quite a few said, why don't you just be a ring card girl? Put on a bikini, get in the ring, and get out. What else are you good for? And that was pretty offensive because they were
Really,
objectifying me. They were seeing me this way instead of this way.
really.
And I was always tested. Well, what do you know? What do you know about boxing? So they would quiz me and ask me things just to trip me up and see if I actually knew what is a jab, what's a right hook, what does a low blow mean, and what's a three knockdown rule, and stupid stuff that I knew like that. And it became a game to me to make people believers. It was fun for me to run into someone who would look at me like I didn't belong there. By the time they left, they went, okay, maybe she knows what she's doing. So that was important to me to earn my place there, to
Yeah.
earn people's respect, to show them that I did belong in the boxing world.
So in a way, you can say that, of course, you have to have the right attitude, but
Oh, gosh, yeah.
in a way, obstacles and issues and problems test your will to obtain results, and so they are a strength in a way and a positive things in a
Well,
way.
they are because you develop a thick skin. You get
Yeah,
to the point where what other people say, what they think, um, what they imagine about you, it's not important to you. I didn't care what anyone said because I knew what I was doing. I knew why I was doing it. And it didn't hurt me at all what other people said because I realized that their opinions and their thoughts had nothing to do with me or my
yeah,
life. I'm going to do what I want. I'm going to live my life. I'm going to pursue my dreams. And other people's opinions mean really nothing. So once I got past caring what other people thought, the road is so clear. You just go and do what you want. You don't let anybody stop you. So that was a good lesson to me to just develop that toughness that said, that's your opinion. You're entitled to it, but I'm going to do what I want.
absolutely. That's a great story and great inspiration, really. I can only imagine also the first time that you had your first boxer as a manager, which, if I am correctly, was not James Toney, but was a heavyweight whose name was Bobby Hitz. Is that
Yes,
correct?
out of Chicago. He came to Detroit to fight
Yeah,
George Foreman. He was an
yeah.
opponent for George Foreman when he made his comeback.
Uh-huh.
And he didn't have a manager. And I said, well, gee, maybe I can manage you. And he said, why not? He had no problems with me being a woman. And he was a wonderful, wonderful guy. And just, we're still like with Tommy, we're still very, very good friends.
He
And
became a promoter in
he
time.
did.
Is that correct? Yeah.
He did. I reached a point with him where I said, if you're not going to be a world champion, you're too smart to be a fighter, really. He was very, very bright. And I said, why don't you get into the managing or promoting side? Because you're just way too smart. And so he did. he retired and went into promoting, and he's been promoting now probably close to 30 years and doing
Yeah,
very
exactly.
well, except for COVID,
Exactly.
of course. But yeah, he's a great guy. And he opened the door for me because when I'd go to the gym with him, other fighters would see me working with him and they saw the rapport we had. They saw the way I dressed him and cared for him and was really supportive. And I think maybe that's what they were looking for in a manager. They didn't just want someone to sign a contract, put them in a fight, show up that night and get their money. I think they wanted somebody who cared and who was nurturing. So he really opened a lot of doors for me.
Is it the reason why probably you never had tens, dozens of hundreds of fighters under your stable, but a few selected fighters, so that you were sure that you could be there for them all of the time? Probably dedication is the key.
And the nicest thing about that is in the 42 years that I've been in boxing and all the fighters that I've managed, I still get birthday cards, Mother's Day cards, phone calls. I see a lot of them, the ones that are here in the Detroit area, but even the ones in California. Just got a call yesterday from Jose Salaya, who's a fighter I managed for a few
Yeah,
years. And they all stay in touch, which tells me that I did something right. I touched them in a way that we are still connected. And whether they were champions or not, in my heart, every one of the fighters I've worked with is a champion to me and in my life. And I have been so blessed with such wonderful men and women. I've managed some wonderful women. Janine Garside, who's from Canada, was a
yeah,
champion. Um, Bridget Riley was amazing. I mean, these are girls, Daisy Lang from Germany. I've worked with some really special women as well. And the most important part to me is not how far they got in their career, but what wonderful friendships we've managed to maintain. That tells me a lot.
yeah, and the special bond that you created during the
Absolutely.
time, and that of course transcend boxing is a bond between two human beings that really connect actually. Bring us in your corner for 1 second. The first boxer that you manage is a heavyweight that has to face George Foreman. Is probably is the very first fight that you have under your managerial banner. He gets
Yes.
KO'd in round one against a comebacking George Foreman. What's your
Right.
feeling? You say, "Oh my God, did I do something wrong with that, or or
Well, no,
what are you
because
feeling?"
when he came to Detroit to fight George, I wasn't managing him.
Oh,
He,
okay, okay,
he
okay.
came without a manager. And even though he lost, I still saw something in him. And I thought, this is someone worthwhile to work with. He's willing to work with me, which was great because a lot of male fighters were embarrassed or just didn't feel comfortable having a female manager. But
Yeah,
Bobby said, I don't care if you can do the job, let's go. And that opened the door because that's where we found James Toney, Kenny Gould, Bronco McCartan, so many other fighters, Tarek Salmasi, Warren Jackson. I mean, they would see me in the gym and they would approach me. So I never really had to go out and find boxers. I was lucky enough that they kind of found their way to me. And then
yeah,
after James became champion in 91, um, they all flocked. I mean, I had so many tapes every day that I could barely really go through them all, and they were from all over the world. So it was very difficult. I got Joseph Chuanuka was from Africa, and I had fighters really from all different places. And it was such an amazing experience for me to work with so many different personalities and being able to accurately judge what each person needed. Some fighters need a lot of encouragement. They're insecure. They don't know if they're as good as they are, and you have to really make them believe in themselves. And
yeah,
other guys are very cocky. I mean, they think they're ready to fight for a title from their first, pro fight. And you have to
yeah,
slow them down and tell them that they still have things to learn, that they're great, but not as great as they think. So it's very much psychological because a
yeah,
lot of boxing is mental. You take two guys that are both physically sharp, that are the same size, the same weight. The one that's mentally stronger will win over the guy that's got insecurities.
Absolutely, absolutely. And if I have to get back to when first I saw James Toney fight, I've been a boxing fan for 35 years now, and I have to say that James Toney was one of the probably the first fighters that I have seen on TV, and of course his fame was very clear. Also here in Italy, and of course he was very connected with your image. So let's go back again 30 years, 35 years, seeing a woman manager in the corner of such a ruthless fighter, such a tough fighter, was a very improbable picture, but of course it worked out. And how did you get to know James?
Well,
You yeah.
James was working out in the same gym where I took Bobby hits. And
Okay, okay,
his manager at the time had been shot and killed very recently, maybe a month before I met him.
okay,
He was
okay.
a drug dealer and he got caught in a bad situation.
Hmm.
So James, who had just turned pro and had a few 4 round fights under his belt, had no manager. And I watched him one day in the gym, and his trainer at the time, Greg Owens, rest in peace, said to me, "What do you think of this kid?" And I said, "Well, he looks pretty good." Well, the next day he got into just a real fight after the fight. After sparring, he was so angry and he was just yelling at everyone in the gym, looking to pick a fight, kicked over the spit bucket, pounded his fists into the lockers. So I really paid attention then. I went, wow, who is this kid? And what passion. I mean, this kid's got spark, he's got fire.
Yeah,
And so we decided to work together, and it just was the right combination, I guess,
yeah,
the
really.
right blend of personalities. Um, he made it interesting. Every day was interesting with him. Just watching him, that shoulder roll and the way he could pick things off.
Abs- Absolutely, absolutely.
It was natural ability. I mean, I found him after a couple tries. We ended up with Bill Miller, who was an
Yeah,
amazing trainer.
yeah, yeah. Old
He was
school.
an old style trainer back
Yeah,
from New York, from Gleason's gym and the old gym, Stillman's gym. He worked with all the old timers, and he was a brilliant teacher. He wasn't just a corner man or a cheerleader or holding the mitts. He taught James so much,
yeah.
and James was a sponge. He soaked it all in, and the combination of the three of us, it just worked.
Absolutely. And the curious thing I was thinking about, you started your again your interest in boxing around probably one of the greatest trainer of all times, which is of course is Emmanuel Stewart. And
Who knew?
how did you decide to become let's say a manager of your own? Wouldn't have ever been a much easier choice just to stick around the Kronk gym?
Well, that's true. But what happened was when I saw Bobby Hits fighting and
Yeah,
he lost, I asked Emmanuel, "Well, what do you think? Is it worth working with him?" And he said,
yeah,
"Not for me." He said, "I wouldn't be interested, but maybe you would." And I went, "Okay, as long as you don't mind, if it's not a conflict or anything, I'll give it a shot." And the same thing happened with James Toney. When James came along, I went to Emmanuel. I said, "What do you think?" And he, I guess, had other fighters in the middleweight division, and he had Gerald McClellan at the time that
yeah,
he was working with,
yeah, yeah.
and he didn't want him. So that was my luck, my gift.
It's
And
incredible story,
yeah,
incredible.
and we all were still friends. There was never any animosity because I managed fighters. I think he was in his own way very proud that I sucked up all that knowledge and went out there and actually put it to use.
Absolutely. And the most incredible thing about James Toney's career in those years from 1989, which was, if I am correct, the year that you picked up
Right,
as a
89 to
manager.
95. Hmm.
Exactly. And looking at that from the managerial point of view, if you go through the record of James Toney, you see that he fought an incredible 7 times under your managerial guidance from July until December in 1989, 10 times in 1990, and 6 times in 1991, which was the year where he won the title. An incredible 23 fights in a 2 year span. Let me ask you this: did he just want to
Isn't that
fight?
amazing? When
That's really
I look
amazing.
back
If you
at
look
that,
at
I think,
today's fighter,
how did I do that? You know,
that's
it was
what
pretty
actually
hard work to.
that was I was actually going to ask you. But of course, I can imagine that some fighters are reluctant to fight often, some fighters are not. But there's a huge managerial work for having 23 fights in just 2 years, and four of them title fights from 91 on. Huge managerial work. How did you do that?
I was on the phone 24 hours a day. And it's funny because there were certain promoters who I would call, and they really just weren't interested. Now, whether they weren't interested in working with me or whether they just didn't see James' potential, I never asked. If somebody just didn't want to use him, I'd get on the phone and get to someone else. And fortunately, I had worked with Bob Arum years before, with Tommy Hearns and
Yep,
all the Kronk fighters. So he was very gracious and gave us an opportunity. And I think we had a kind of a turning point with Murky Sosa, who was
yeah,
a
yeah,
really top prospect.
yeah,
And no one really wanted to fight Murky or James, but Murky was very awkward. So it was a kind of a tough fight. But Bill Miller assured me that he would get him ready for that fight and that he would win it. And he said, "Trust me, I think we got this one." And that led the way to a world
yeah.
title. And then Michael Nunn had an opponent fall out due to an injury, and the opportunity came to fight for the title, but it was in his hometown, which
Absolutely,
a lot of people said, "You're not going to go to Davenport, Iowa, and fight the champ, are you?" And I said, "Damn right we are. You know, if we have a chance to get that title, we're going to go get it." And it wasn't an easy fight. It wasn't a slam dunk
absolutely
fight by
not,
any
absolutely
means.
not.
James had to fight for it. And when he got that knockout in the 11th round with that amazing left hook,
Absolutely.
it was just a spectacular moment for him and certainly for me.
Once again, bring us to your corner during that fight, because, as you said, James Toney was not the original opponent for Michael Nunn. It was a kind of a substitute, not late substitute, but was a substitute. And most of the boxing people thought that he was not ready for a guy like Michael Nunn, that was actually saw as the heir apparent to the great four of the middleweights of the end of the 80s. So it was
That's right.
that was had the resemblance of a mismatch in a way.
20 to
And
1 underdog, 20 to
yeah,
1.
yeah,
That's a
exactly.
mismatch by anybody's guess.
And actually during the first 5 or 6 rounds, it actually looked like a mismatch because Michael Nunn had his way against James. So bring us to your corner in your mind back at the time. First 5 or 6 rounds, what was going through your mind?
Well, what was going through my mind was we are behind and it's going to take a knockout to win this fight.
Yeah,
And I think that my main thing was to keep saying, "You're not tired. You got more. Let's go." This is round coming up. This is your round. If that didn't happen in the fifth or sixth, seventh, eighth, by the ninth round, we got to get this. This is the most important fight of your life. We got to get this. So you got to dig deep, keep going. Dig deeper. What have you got? Let's see it. Bring it. And
incredible,
we
incredible.
all just kept urging him to go deep. You may think you've given everything you've got, but there's more. There is more in there. Just go down and get it. And he was able to pull out that extra whatever energy, that extra adrenaline, testosterone, whatever it was that just powered his hands to drop the giant. He did it. And
Absolutely.
it was just a magic night because we all willed it to happen. We wanted it so badly. And I just think we came together as a unit and we just made it happen for him. But it was all James. It was his ability, his talent, and he just is an amazing athlete.
Absolutely, absolutely. And of course, you remember that Italian boxing fans are connected in a way with James Toney and with you because after probably I think a first title defense against Reggie Johnson, you came close to Italy to face an Italian fighter, which was Francesco Dell'Aquila,
That's right.
and the fight was not held in Italy but close to Italy, Monte Carlo.
Monte Carlo. It was
Yeah,
so beautiful.
yeah,
And of course, I had to go to Italy because I'm so close. So we took a train into, was it Ventimiglia? Is that near there?
yeah, yeah.
Yeah.
Exactly, exactly,
And we
exactly.
went there and they had this huge flea market there.
Yeah.
Oh, when people say, "What do you remember about that fight?" I remember going to Italy for the flea market. That was the best.
That actually was very very nice and interesting. But Italian boxing fans remember also another subject. Let's go back in time. That's interesting, of course, because our massive fan base is in Italy, so that's something that we like a little bit to go through for a second. In that fight, a lot of people remember that James Toney went at the weigh-in quite heavy and probably above, really above the middleweight limit. And I personally remember an
Yeah.
interview with Italian commentator Mario Giambuzzi when you said, quote, we wait every day in our hotel in Lowe's. There was a scale there and everything was fine. So it's quite a surprise for us. Now, 30 years after, were you aware that James were really overweight, or was it really just a surprise having him at 164 or something like that?
In those days, I kind of believed my fighter if he said that he was on weight, and I saw it. But what I didn't see a lot of times was the food that was snuck in late at night, a pizza
Hmm.
or
Okay.
a run to McDonald's that I didn't know about. And so James loved to eat. And so there were times where, even though he knew he had to make weight, he was hungry. And I think he felt that he could get away with it. But his weight was an issue, certain fights. And I think that in the Dave Tiberi fight,
Yeah.
that was an issue. And all I can say is, despite having that weight issue with him, he still managed to pull off some incredible wins. So, it was an issue, but eventually he outgrew middleweight, he outgrew super middleweight, light heavyweight, and he became a
Yes.
full blown heavyweight, which he
Yeah,
did
he
very
went
much
on to,
on it.
to fight as a cruiserweight and also a heavyweight. We remember also his fight against Evander Holyfield and Vasily Jurov. So
Yeah.
very very far from middleweight. But um, thanks for bringing back also that little particulars for the Italian fight. Um, I would like to ask you something about being a first and disrupting um, woman boxing personality in boxing. Do you think that your success somehow paved the way also for women boxing, for women athletes to perform boxing? Because I remember at that time, uh, female boxers were beginning to come up. I remember Layla Ali and Christy Martin
Mhm.
and also Milton Jones. Do you think that your success paved the way for them to become a phenomenon, so to speak?
Well, I don't know because I wasn't an actual boxer myself, but Christy trained at my gym before she even married Jim. She was Christy Salters when I first met her. And
Okay.
I always had a soft spot for the women in any aspect, whether it was as a woman writer, a woman publicist, um, a woman trainer like Ann Wolf. I have a lot of respect for the women, the very few of them that have come into our sport over the years. I think I thought there'd be a lot more. And when the movie came out in 2004, I was
Yeah.
thinking it might inspire a lot of women. But I think boxing is still the kind of sport that is predominantly male. And it takes a certain type of woman to maneuver around all the executives, the TV execs, the promoters. Being in a gym atmosphere is not easy. Some women, the language, the smells, the sounds, the constant noise, a lot of women just don't feel comfortable in that setting. But luckily for me, I only had a brother, no sisters. And my
Okay.
father was one of three brothers. And then I married a man that was one of four brothers. And then I had two sons. So I've been around men my entire life. And
Really?
I'm actually more comfortable around men than
Yeah,
women because I'm not the type of woman that wants to sit around and talk about, you know, clothes and my nails and talk about other people and stuff. It just
yeah.
doesn't interest me. I like sports and I like cars and I like gambling and I like a lot of things that you would consider male
Male, yeah, yeah.
interests. So, I thought more women were like me, and there have been several that have contacted me over the years that I stay in touch with, who I've encouraged, to go on and do the same thing I did and open a gym if you want to, and manage fighters if you want to, train them, um, sponsor a fighter, whatever. But there's still very few,
Yeah,
surprisingly.
yeah. It's surprising that 30 years have passed and still probably there's a lot of things to build and fights to be fought for women in this kind of
How about
sports, probably.
Italy? What's it like in Italy? Are there any women that are involved in the sport from the management side or the training side?
Yes, we have to say not really in training, but from the fighting side, let's say that the popularity of women boxers has grown all over the year. We also had a few European and world champions, and so I have to say that here in Italy probably is one of the countries where women boxing is more prominent in a way. So in that respect, probably it's one of the few areas where we are, early adopters or front runners. So in a way.
I love the Italian people. That's one of the reasons I was so eager to do this with you. The man that I've been with for over 20 years is full blood Italian from Rome, and
Okay.
his whole family is from Rome. And I'm with many Italian people all the time because of that. And there's such a zest. Italian people have a wonderful attitude, I think. They love life and they make the most of every day. I love the attitude of the Italian people that I know. So, to all my Italian friends,
Thanks for your appreciation, and I think that it's in our DNA just trying to make the best of what we have and always trying to do that with a smile on our face. A little bit of a reference, Jackie, about the movie. I would like to ask you specifically if, of course, I followed your career
mhm,
and I watched the movie several times. Would you say that your story was portrayed entirely properly? No. Okay. Absolutely
no,
not.
no, it was nothing like my life. When they bought the story, it was about a woman in a man's world who was married, raising children, trying to bring these fighters into her home with her children being jealous and the husband being crazy. And they left all that on the cutting room floor and they turned it into a single woman with no children, no husband. I'm from Detroit. They made the character from Cleveland. I mean,
Mm,
they changed it so much that I didn't recognize the person. I said, who?
exactly.
They had
Exactly.
my name, but it wasn't my story. And Meg Ryan, the actress that played me, I don't know that she was perhaps what I would have chosen, but you know what? It was a good experience, and I hope it inspired women to go out and do what they want to do. And if it served a purpose, then so be it.
Yeah, absolutely. And we talked about movies in the way. Let's go back to your experience, of course, being a boxing manager with TV networks, and also today with other kind of medias that, of course, have changed the rules of the game probably in the course of the years. You We had world boxing on national TV, then cable, then pay-per-view, and now digital platforms. The game has changed a lot. The model of broadcasting has changed a lot. Uh, was it all a change for the better, or maybe we are losing something?
Well, that's a really good question. It's a well thought out question because in some ways I liked it better back in the days of Hearns, Leonard, Duran, Hagler, the great matchups, the big fights in Las Vegas. And I think that was a wonderful era for boxing. I don't see it like that right now. I think a lot of it changed when the UFC came along and MMA. They took a lot of our audience away,
Yeah,
which is okay because that's a good sport as well. But boxing doesn't have enough big name personalities like it used to. I mean, Muhammad Ali was huge. Mike Tyson was huge. We had these Sugar Ray Leonard characters that really made the sport sell. And now, other than Mayweather, who's retired, although I know he's talking about fighting again, but there aren't a lot of marquee names that really drive a pay per view to huge numbers. Um, I know Mike Tyson, when he did his exhibition with Roy Jones, which wasn't even a real fight, that got over 1 million buys because people are starved for anything boxing related.
yeah.
And there aren't the great matchups, I don't think, that we had back in the 80s and 90s, but I think it'll come around again. Boxing's been around for hundreds of years. It's not going anywhere. And I think, like everything else, it has its peaks and then it dips down again and it'll come back again. It's a great sport.
Let's hope so. And also, what do you think about all this exposure that some young fighters are having or experiencing through social media? If you apply the same kind of systems to fighters for the 80s and the 90s, do you think that the same kind of media exposure again will be a good things or a bad things? Because I'm asking you this because today you get to know everything about a boxing prospect or a fighter with no filters. There's no press. There is no mediation. Is it good? Is it bad?
Well, there's some good to it and some bad to it. Now, the good side of it is that when we want to check out a fighter, we can go to YouTube and we can usually find some footage of that fighter to
Yeah,
watch.
yeah.
Back in the day, we didn't have that. We had to buy tapes from people that would tape fights on TV and then sell their library fight by fight. If you wanted a specific fighter, you would call this person and say, I need to see a fight of Mike McCallum. And then they tell you all the fights they had of Mike McCallum, and you'd buy them so your fighter could watch those tapes.
Okay, okay.
It's much easier today with social media. You can find out, like you said, you can find out anything about the fighter. Is he married? Is he single? What did he eat for breakfast? How many fights did he have as a kid? I mean, everything. So it's good and it's bad. It's bad if you have things you want to hide because, social media can dig up anything about anyone. But
Absolutely.
but it's also good because we have more access to information. So there were times when we fought guys we didn't even know if they were southpaws or not. We didn't have enough information. Now you know everything. So there's the good and the bad, but I think if it's used properly, it's a good tool.
Okay, so I was also wondering if also this exposure and this usage of social medias and social accounts uh, probably take some focus away from from the boxer. You imagine a boxer and the fighter just with a narrow focus on training and a simple life, and then you stay all day through in this social media probably takes away something away from the fighter, especially the young fighter. But
It's
maybe it's just
fun.
my thought.
It's funny you say that because I remember back in the day, we would want our fighters to stay away from women. We'd try to keep women out of the gym, keep their girlfriends away, take them to
Yeah.
training camp to get them far away from women. Now it's like, give me your phone, you know, get in the gym, do it. I'll hold your phone. Just do what you have to do. Because honestly, in between rounds, they're like checking their emails and looking to see who texted them. And it's just too much input that isn't focused on boxing. So sometimes I wish fighters would just get off social media for a while, right before a fight, anyways. Just focus, because there's too many distractions, anyways. But you can get sucked into that social media cycle, and you're just on there every day posting and reading and Instagram and Twitter, and it just becomes overwhelming. So there's times when you want to just take the phones away from them.
Absolutely, absolutely. And Jackie, we are, from my point of view, very, very well and very nicely in our 45th minute of talking. And
It went
I'm
fast, didn't it?
yeah, yeah, absolutely. And I'm thinking as we speak that why not? Maybe there's going to be another or other occasions when we can uh, talk about boxing. That would be nice.
I
But
would love that. Please, let's do it again.
let's, yeah, yeah, yeah. Let's think about something of serious of that. Probably it would be very, very nice.
I would love to do
Um,
that with you. That would be wonderful. You know how to
that
reach me.
Yeah, of course, of course. And before we are going to the end of this talk, just imagine from your experience that you have the chance to mentor a young manager that wants to begin his career as a manager. Being that a woman or a man, it doesn't matter. You're a successful manager, not a successful woman manager. You're a successful manager. Three main piece of advice that you will give this young aspiring manager? What will you say to him or to her?
Well, number one, as I said before, don't pay attention to anything anyone says. Follow your own mind and your own decisions, and develop that thick skin. That's always number one. Number two, I would tell any manager, do not burn any bridges. If you have an issue with someone, another manager, a promoter, don't burn any bridges. Keep the door always open. I've been 43 years in the business. I've never been sued. I've never gone to arbitration. I've never had an issue that couldn't be resolved by sitting down and talking it over. So it's very important, you know, to never burn a bridge. Keep communications open. And number three, learn as much as you can about the sport, about the contracts involved. Learn all the different sides to the sport. If you're going to manage a fighter, know more than just how to sign a contract. Learn how to get the best fights at the best time. Learn what's the best for your fighter. Don't treat every fighter the same, because they're not the same. Learn to know each of your fighters' strengths and weaknesses, and treat them like the human beings that they are. They're not a piece of meat to be thrown out there so you can get a payday. Treat them like you would want to be treated. And those are the three tips that I would give anybody that wants to get into the sport.
And I think that these are three of the most precious piece of advices and pearls that we could get from a very successful manager, a very successful woman in life. And Jackie, thanks so much for being with us. It
My
was a real pleasure. It's a real pleasure, and I hope again that we can do it again probably, and we can still continue to talk about boxing. I will go on cam just for 1 second to say hi from you. We had a problem with our internet connection, but unfortunately, but we still had
It was
the
still
chance to
wonderful.
talk.
I enjoyed it so much. You asked very good questions, and it just flew by. It was just so much fun. The time just flew by.
Absolutely, absolutely. So let's do it
We'll do
again.
it
Okay.
again. So you stay in touch, okay?
Of course. Thanks a lot, Jackie. Thank you very much.
Bye.
Bye.